And now I have to argue with a Trumple. She might not even be a Trumple. I wish I could have watched the video. I hate myself that I didn't. She's not even a Trumple also, guys. Don't stop. Oh, hello, hello.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going? Just as a heads up, because I'm not sure how familiar you are with the format, I'm live, so don't say anything personally revealing like a phone number or an address or anything like that.
Okay, I won't. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me.
Um, there was no way I was not going to join this because I feel I guess the only accurate way to say it is existential levels of gratitude to you because you have been such a voice of moral clarity in a space where that is very difficult at a time when very few had that clarity in the space that you're in. And I think I and a lot of people, American Jews, feel like your moral clarity was a lifesaver.
Oh, this is about
This
Israel-Palestine
is,
stuff?
yeah,
Okay,
but
gotcha.
in general, just like, at a time when it's like everything is either at heightened levels of irony or moral relativism, like for somebody to just say, actually, like the difference between right and wrong exists, and I'm just gonna operate from that point of view. It's like, as an American, I feel like that's what patriotism looks like today. And like you and I may not agree on a lot of things, but in my mind, like my America has to have you in it. Like if I can't come up with a we or like an e pluribus unum vision of America that doesn't include somebody like you, I'm failing. So all of which is to say, I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me and for everything that you do.
Well, thank you so much. That's going to make the rest of this
Welcome.
conversation very interesting, I guess. Yeah. I saw, okay, I'm going to be completely and totally honest. I saw that you had a video that was starting to blow up on Twitter and I think on YouTube about Trump derangement syndrome, which is something we talk about a lot on my stream because I am a obsessive Trump hater. Okay. I'm Trump's number one anti-fan. But I just found out today that there's a bunch of weird stuff going on at Twitch. You know, if you guys are bored, you should cover it. A lot of weird anti-Semitic stuff. We just found out that Twitch has had a geolocation ban on Israel for over a year for making new accounts. It was very strange. So we've been like,
What?
yeah, we've been covering like a lot of weird stuff going on
Oh my God.
today in the
That's
past few days.
terrible.
So I did. So that all that said, to have the excuse of I was going to watch the video to prep and I didn't have time to do it. So if you could, do you want to catch people up to who you are, I guess what that video was about, and then we could have
Yeah,
a chat. Yeah.
sure. I don't walk around calling people like you have Trump derangement syndrome, you have Trump derangement syndrome. That video was there was another guy at the Free Press where I have a show who is a self-described Trump derangement syndrome haver.
Hmm.
So he wouldn't say like you, I'm a hater of Trump. He comes out and says, I have Trump derangement syndrome. So he was going to write a piece about it. And so they invited me to have him on the show to try to sort of help him through it. And so we did a kind of like, we started it with a kind of funny opening, there's a disease afflicting many of our fellow Americans, blah, blah, blah. But it was a joke. I mean, I obviously think there are many legitimate reasons not to like Trump. I respect many of them. I don't respect all of them. But I would never say to somebody like, I think you're deranged for not liking this person, not voting for this person. The video was my attempt to sort of make him feel a little bit better, to sort of say, like, well, given everything that I think you believe, here are the sort of three objections people seem to have to Trump. And here would be my way of addressing those sort of three objections. And so we went through them one by one. And at the end, he was like, well, I still hate him, but I do feel a little bit better. And I think that was sort of my goal was, to explain to him something that I think is very mysterious to people who truly hate Trump, who don't have people in their lives who really like him, which is how could so many people like this person so much? So, and I think that, for people who truly love this country, that I think you do, people who are true patriots, like people want to understand how the other side sees things. Like I encounter that a lot as well on the right. Like people want to understand their fellow Americans. I think it's only the people in the elites who make money off of division and divisiveness who really don't want to understand. They want to believe that everybody on the other side is either a racist or, a groomer, right? Or whatever it is. But I think average people, like, really want to understand how their fellow Americans think. And when they get a reasonable explanation for why millions of people disagree with them on an issue, it actually is like you do feel a relief. Like you feel like, oh, that's what it's about. So that's what the video was about. And I don't think I convinced him about anything, but I think I did make him feel a little bit better.
Gotcha. Okay, okay, that makes sense. Um, Man, okay, so well, where to go from here? Um, I do you? How much time do you have?
Is that not what you were expecting? Why did you invite me on? I should ask. Like, well, I know
Well,
why
now I
I'm
wish you
here,
would have watched the video.
but
So I personally, I think that Trump and the movement that he represents is an existential threat to the United States and the stability of our democracy. I think that content creators that have been involved in supporting him, I think are, if they're not criminals, they're as close to that line as possible. I think that there's been an unprecedented wave of hateful anti-American rhetoric, anti-patriotic rhetoric, self-destructive rhetoric that has come from Trump and then his allies and then that side in an unprecedented way that isn't even close to mirrored on the other side. So obviously a lot of conservatives that I argue with would call me a deranged Trump hater. But then when I try to get into the weeds on any of these particular factors, they can rehearse. They have like a few rehearsed Trump talking points, and then they just completely and immediately fall apart, and it's very, very, very frustrating to me. So that question that you also I ramble a lot. If I ever say anything, you want to cut me off immediately, say something. The thing that you mentioned for the guy, or the thing that you mentioned about wanting to understand the other side, or figuring out like, well, what is it? What's driving the difference between both people? Just as a real quick thing, my mom is from Cuba. And my dad is from Kentucky. I grew up very conservative, very Republican. So if you ask me like, well, what does a conservative or a Republican think? I think I can tell you pretty easily like where the feelings and the beliefs and the opinions and everything come from, especially around moral issues like pro-life and anti-gay marriage. I understand that very well. I went to a Catholic school for up through high school. For the current iteration of this like post-Tea Party MAGA movement, my answer is it exclusively almost is powered by conservative disinformation. And I think it's destroying the country. I think the movement is unsalvageable, and I think that we're like on a path to destruction if we keep pretending that both sides are even remotely the same on this issue. And then, yeah, go for it.
you grew up poor also, right?
I grew up upper middle class until I was around 13, and then my mom quit her job for reasons, and then we were kind of financially screwed for about 5 years, and then I was financially screwed for about a year, and then I got into streaming very luckily. So I've had my ups and downs.
Um, so the perspective I'm coming at this from is I wrote two books and both of them are kind of about the same thing, which is that the real divide in America is not actually right versus left. It's the class divide. It's about whether you have a college degree or not, and that a lot of factors go into if you have that degree, you're much more likely to be able to achieve the American dream statistically, to be able to become a homeowner, to be able to retire in dignity. Your children will be upwardly mobile. But if you're working class, the way you were for many years, it's much more challenging. I mean, you have a genius for something that's very obvious, but for a lot of people who are doing sort of average jobs that really only need to be done, pretty well, the American dream is increasingly out of reach. So for my second book, I traveled around the country for about a year interviewing working class people from Democrat, Republican, both background, all religious backgrounds, all racial backgrounds, all family, gender, whatever. And what I found was actually very little distinguished working class people who voted for Democrats and working class people who voted for Republicans. And I can tell you a little bit more if it's interesting, like where they sort of, in general, sort of fall on the issues. There's a kind of weird consensus that's happened among people who don't have a college degree. The real polarization is between the elites on both sides. And I think a lot of the conservatives you're talking to are probably in that right wing elite that does get a lot of money and power out of polarization. But when you talk to average Americans, their views on policy, whether they vote for Republicans or Democrats, are very similar. So they're quite, well, left/protectionist on economic stuff. So your average Trump voter would want something like, universal health care, tariffs. They're not against government investment in people who are struggling. What they want really is an economy that supports their labor. But then also the Democrats who are working class want much less immigration. They're very worried about the transgender stuff and the woke stuff. So there's very little that sort of, I like after I wrote the book, I was sort of joking and I would, say like the first party that gets to, much more access to healthcare and much less immigration is going to get an immediate 60% of the vote because most Democratic working class people and most Republican working class people are there. And it's not just my interviews. I mean, I interviewed hundreds of people, but it's the polling shows that.
Hmm.
And so the argument I would make to you is I can show you how when you take the personality of Trump out of it, you just look at the policy agenda and you go like issue by issue. His policy, both what he enacted during his first term and the stuff that he talks about now, is where most of those working class people are at. It's actually in that kind of moderate middle. He sounds a lot more like a Democrat from the 90s than he sounds like a Republican from the 2000s, or then a Democrat from today sounds like a Democrat from the 90s. So we could go through that. But I think also, even at a larger level, I totally respect and understand people who can't get past the character, who can't get past the shit talking, whatever. But I think even this question of whether you're casting your vote based on policy or based on character or sort of high level abstract ideas like democracy. I mean, of course you would say democracy is not an abstract idea, right? But even that decision, I think at the end of the day, today is going to come down to that class divide and whether an American, a person feels that they have the luxury of saying, I'm going to vote for the person who I feel makes me feel at an abstract level better, or I'm going to vote for the person who's just like, I have this feeling like they're going to be able to get the economy back to where it was in 2019 when working class people saw their first wage increases for the first time in 60 years and inflation was still low.
Sure. So, okay, how to start? Um, there are things that I can kind of agree with, but I would say that these things are meaningless because I would say they're like second or third order. So I would say that like if I was to agree that Americans are having broad agreements around policy, it's only happening because on the first order or on a lower order, what their concept of policy is so far removed from the factual reality of whatever it is we're talking about. That like one of the issues that we're having right now is one of the issues that we're having, and I'm going to come back to this a lot, is that the right is involved in so much misinformation. It has destroyed our ability to have policy conversation. We don't do policy in the United States right now on the conservative side. It doesn't exist. And we can get into that deeper, but I would say that like a really good example of this has to do with, I would cite this example. I would say that probably the vast majority of Americans actually would agree on things like a vaccine mandate if we all agreed on the underlying facts. If I could show you that a vaccine was incredibly safe and that the disease had a high level of transmission and was incredibly lethal, I think almost everybody needs to be like, yeah, of course, everybody has to get vaccinated, right? I don't think that even though we're debating over lockdowns and whether we should do them or not, or debating over vaccines and whether or not we should mandate them or even offer them, I don't think the debate is really about those things. I think it's about the underlying facts that we believe to be true about those things. How am I going to convince somebody of a vaccine mandate if they think that, Bill Gates put microchips in the vaccine to make your dick fall off or something, right? That's not a real conversation. And then conversely, right, as an extension of that for this conversation, to say that, oh no, well, Americans do agree on this particular policy point. I don't even know what they think that policy means when they're from the right, especially from the right, and several orders of magnitude worse than from the left, when the misinformation machines that are being powered from Donald Trump from the top down are so powerful. They are destroying our ability to have a conversation in this country.
Okay, I'm not gonna like waste time being like, well, the Democrats also do misinformation. Like I'm sure, I'm sure there are things that Democrats have done that you would also be like, yeah, that's lame, but not as bad. So let's just set that aside, right? Because,
Well,
but
wait,
yeah.
I think that is probably my biggest pet peeve when I argue with a ton of people right now. So I don't think we should set that aside.
Oh, okay.
So as a quick thing, right? Are you familiar with the Fox News Dominion lawsuit?
Yeah.
Nothing on the left is even remotely close to that. Nothing, right? Would you agree with that, or do you think there's something on the left that is like comparable to that?
I do. Yeah. I would say that I would say that the sort of constant implication that Donald Trump was an illegitimate president, as Hillary Clinton put it, for the whole 4 years of his presidency, because he was a Putin plant, I think that that was incredibly divisive for the country.
Well, when I say comparable, I mean in terms of like just blatant lies, right? Like somebody could have that
Well,
opinion, but the
well,
Dominion stuff was the all of the execs and all of the show hosts knew that they were lying, and they continued to do so because they didn't want to lose their audience to Newsmax and OAN.
well, if I recall correctly, it was only Maria Bartiromo and Tucker Carlson who were mentioned in this suit, and Tucker Carlson himself had Sidney Powell on and gave her a very vigorous. It was very interesting because he was named in the lawsuit, but his interview with Sidney Powell, he concluded there's no there, and he was literally saying to her, "I'm begging you to produce the evidence." Like, I mean, it's a 10-minute interview, and he concludes it, and then she signs off, and he says to the audience, "She did not produce it. We are waiting. You know, if she wants to produce it, we'll have her back on." So it was really just the two hosts who were named, and one of them, I still to this day don't understand why he was named because he gave her actually the most vigorous interview she had outside of, CNN, MSNBC. I will say that, after the 2016 election, 66% of Democratic voters thought that Putin had actually intervened in the voting tallies to change the results of the election. So
Wait, but if we were to
yeah.
compare that, how many still believe? First of all, I don't know if I believe that first number, but let's say that that was true. How many believe that
Mhm.
now?
What do you mean? How many believe it
Well,
now?
because right now, like 80% plus of conservatives, by reputable polling, 80 plus percent of conservatives don't believe that the results of the last election are legitimate.
So we have 66 to 80. Okay,
Well, no,
yeah,
but
it's a
that
little bit
66, I
higher.
might have believed that like at the heyday of the height of the election, but certainly not for months or
Yeah,
years
because
afterwards.
I mean, I would submit it's because they won the next election, and if the Republicans win this election, their trust will also go down because that is sort of the nature of the beast. When you're back at sitting pretty, your trust in the institutions which served you returns, right? So
Well,
we
but
will have a
the
chance to compare that.
but the Democrats never ever engaged in a scheme similar to J6 on the level that Trump did. There were like multiple criminal conspiracies that were moving in tandem.
Why do you think 66% of Democrats thought Putin had intervened to change the tallies? What's your read on that?
I mean, part of it was probably because of Trump and his campaign's behavior, right? The fact that Donald Trump was openly calling for Russia to leak 10,000 emails on public media, the fact that Roger Stone was openly and brazenly working with Julian Assange to leak stuff about the Democrats that was hacked out of their convention by a Russian hacker, the fact that Julian Assange, who was a supporter of Trump, said, "I'm not going to leak anything bad about Trump's campaign because I don't think there's anything that bad to leak." I think that
So
people.
you don't think Clinton literally saying Trump is an illegitimate president because Putin got him elected had anything to do with Democrats changing their minds about that?
I think that there's
Or the
one quote that Hillary
yeah.
said, but that was after the election, and Hillary conceded that night, right?
Yeah, no, I'm glad she conceded that night.
Yeah,
I
and
it's just I
Trump
think this
engaged
is
in
comparable.
multiple. Trump engaged in multiple like criminal actions to try to overturn the election outcome, right?
Well, okay, so I we can debate January 6th. I don't think it will be
Hmm.
very productive because I don't think I think at the end of the day my difference from you will come down to a kind of theory of mind, an unknowable thing, which is Trump's intention and how he intended that day to go down. I really don't think we're going to agree on that. Can I go back to the policy thing though because I think it's really important.
You can, yeah, we can go back to that if you want, but it will come back here because I think this is everything. Because I think that the theory of mind and all the other conversation topics don't matter because it draws this weird false equivalency of like, well, all these things are happening. It's like, no, there's like a crazy thing that's happening right now, and I don't know why nobody's talking about it. It's insane to me. Like, just as a quick matter of things, would you agree that January 6th was easily worse than Watergate? Like, because
I
in
think
my mind, there's a thing that no reasonable minds will disagree here. It's impossible to even
I
look at
think it
them.
was very, very bad. Yeah. I mean,
It's not even close to Watergate. It's infinitely worse than Watergate.
worse from what point of view though? Like
From the fact that
from
the
my,
president was working with personal lawyers and was working with members inside and outside of the party to solicit across 7 states 79 fake electors to attest that they were the duly appointed electors for their state and to transmit false votes to the White House. Or I'm sorry, to the Capitol. Yeah.
I think he was availing himself of every legal avenue to prove what he thought was the case, which was that he had won, which is something Democrats have done in 2 of the 3 elections that happened this century as well. But I think the more interesting debate is why some people feel the way I do and not the way you do. No, like it's why people don't are not at like I'm very, I continue to be consistently impressed with your moral clarity. So I'm asking myself, how come I am not outraged at the level that he is, this person who I respect and admire on this particular issue? And I think that the answer to that is more interesting than litigating, because I've seen you have this debate about January 6th so well, and people much better than me had this argument and this debate. I think the more interesting question is why the people who are not so exercised about it are not so exercised about it. Don't know. Is that not like a, do you not agree with that?
Not even remotely close. It is probably one of the most frustrating, like, gaslighting experiences I've ever had in my entire life. Is, and I think that this is like it's the ruin of this country, is to pretend that this hasn't happened, and then to pretend like afterwards we can just have a conversation about, like, is mom worse for you or is dad worse for you, when, mom spanked you as a kid, and dad would, slash your arms with a knife anytime you looked at him wrong. And then to just say, well, I don't think it's worth going into the differences in behavior. I don't think it's really that important to analyze that. Let's just think more about, like, well, what do we think about moms and dads?
But are you not curious why so many millions of Americans don't find this to be disqualifying? Is that not interesting?
I know why. And the reason why is because of
Okay,
the
yeah.
conservative control over the media. The reason
Oh,
why, I know that
you don't think that.
I do, I know that. I know that for a fact. Because the reason why people disagree is because they think that there is a factual playing field that shows that both sides engage in a bit of tomfoolery. Sometimes the liberals lie, sometimes the conservatives lie. Trump might have done this thing, but Hillary did that thing. And at the end of the day, we're just kind of seeing broadly who supports, like, what policy positions. Because for some reason in the media, there's a lot of credibility given to people who give Trump a fair shake, even if he hasn't earned one. And I don't know personally what to do
They do
to
that, I think,
overcome that.
because I,
Help
right,
me.
because they do that because I think they have met a lot of people who, first of all, it's funny to me to hear you say that you think the liberal media gives him a fair shake, because it's, I find,
No. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I misspoke. The liberal
you think the
media doesn't give
conservative
him
media.
a fair shake. They give him an over fair shake. It's unfair. The liberal media should be chastising and castigating him constantly, but they don't. They give him a free pass on so much.
I watch CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News all day long as part of my day job. They never have a kind word to say about that man. I mean, it's literally he's a plant of Putin. He's a plant of this one. He's Hitler. He's worse than Hitler. Like day in and day out. Like it's literally there's the idea that he's getting a fair shake from them. How often do you watch like cable? Probably never.
I
It's
just watched
like
a segment yesterday on, I think it was CNN, where they have Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary and some other crazy Jennings or some guy arguing against two other people. Unfortunately, too much. I've watched all the debates so far. Did you watch the Bloomberg debate recently with Trump?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was one where all the conservatives were complaining that the moderator was too hard on Trump. I thought that in that debate, the moderator wasn't even close to Trump. Like, do you acknowledge it? Like, well, okay, hold on, wait,
No,
here.
no, no. I don't want you to feel gaslighted.
Okay,
I
okay.
will.
Can
I will
we
feel
just?
terrible if that's,
I
yeah.
just want to, like, walk through one set of facts. Also, if you want to interrupt me, or if you want to talk about, like, another thing, you can do it. I don't want to, like, hostage take you here,
Well,
but go ahead.
I think the reason people feel inclined to think about Trump this way is because, well, okay, I can speak for myself. Why do I feel like countenancing these policy questions that I really want to get to is incredibly important? It's setting aside my own whatever aesthetic, moral judgments, whatever, and it's because like there are millions and millions and millions of Americans who do not have the luxury of being wrong because their bank accounts do not afford it to them, who say and feel and know and are correct that they were better off, and feel and say
Wait,
and are
better off when?
under Trump's first term than under Biden's term.
Trump's
And so
first term ended with 18% unemployment, with a destroyed
well, we
economy.
don't hold him responsible for the coronavirus, which I don't think they should. I mean, that's, that was a once in a
Wait. Then
lifetime.
why are we holding Biden responsible for the coronavirus? Because that's the.
No, they're not. I mean,
If you were to
they're
say I'm better under Trump, but ignore the last half of his presidency, and then say, well, look at what I am under Biden, who is coming in. By the way, the United States, do you acknowledge that the US is outperforming every other G7, every other OECD country right now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is this like? Well, we were better under Trump. You weren't better under Trump. You were better before COVID, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, under Trump. I mean, and the reason that they were better under Trump because he reversed certain economic trends that had been afflicting the United States for since 1971, which was the high watermark for working class wages. They stagnated after that and then began to precipitously decline when you factor in inflation. And the reason for that is policy that, if you're a working class person, at the end of the month, there's a certain amount of money in your bank account. And it doesn't matter what you're hearing from conservative media, like that doesn't lie, right? Like there's a certain level of, existential crisis that no amount of media or culture wars or influencers or what have you can fake, right? It's a reality that you come up against. And the reality is that things were really getting bad for working class people. And Trump reversed that trend. In 2019, we saw the first wage increases for working class Americans in 60 years. If you look at the data, 2019, the bottom 25% of wage earners saw a 4.5% wage increase, and the top 25% of wage earners only saw a 2% wage increase, which means that Trump was the first president since 1971 to shrink the wealth gap, which is something no one wants to talk about because the free market right obviously really doesn't care and really doesn't want to talk about it, but the left doesn't want to give him credit for that. And you ask, okay, how did he do that? Well, through a series of very intentional policies that started to reverse that trend, policies that had been put in place by, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, later Joe Biden, amping up some of them. So, immigration is a really good example because the policy was so clear and so obvious. There were three executive actions that just made the number of illegal immigrants crossing the southern border plummet. And one of the first things Joe Biden did when he came into office was remove those executive orders, which meant that we saw this crisis at the border and, 10 million, 15 million, whatever the number is, illegal immigrants coming into the country. And what that did was immediately halted the wage growth that working class people saw because suddenly you had millions and millions of people competing in a very limited number of industries that had been seeing wage increases because of the limit of illegal labor and because, of course, of the post-pandemic labor crunch. So, things like that, where it's like the policy is very, very clear. And the way that it helped very specific, struggling working class Americans is very, very clear. So you could say, look, you vote this guy in, we're not going to have a country because we're not going to have a democracy. And we can definitely debate that. But to somebody who is a janitor, who started to suddenly see like wage increase and then to have that taken away by very obvious, clear executive orders because policy really matters, to me, I wouldn't say to that person, you have to put this other higher order thing ahead of whether you can feed your family. Like, to me, I want to live in a country where working class people who we rely on to survive can achieve the American dream so that, it's not something that just the elites can achieve, which is sort of where we were headed in the years before. And this is all just, aside from the questions of character, aside from the questions of January 6th, like there is, at the end of the day, for me, this as a person of the left, like this very material reality we're coming up against, where we in the elites developed and allowed this economy to flourish, where we did really well. But the people whose labor we rely on to survive were really struggling. And it was when I first realized this, it was not comfortable for me to admit this. I knew I was going to lose all my friends, but I just feel that the data is very clear about that. And I'm not one to say to a person who has much less than me, you're struggling much more than me, you have to put my emotional response to this person ahead of being able to feed your family.
Okay. I'm going to put a pin on the economic stuff because I disagree with you on every single economic claim you just made. But we can come back and we can talk through all of these if you'd like. I'm very interested in these. Okay. I need a sanity test. Okay. This conversation real quick. Okay. Do we believe, I'm just checking, do we believe that we can know things that we don't directly observe? So, for instance, if I read a news report and it says, yesterday a building exploded in New York, can I believe that that probably happened with a high degree of certainty, even if I haven't myself seen it?
It depends which newspaper.
Mainstream newspaper with millions of readers, if multiple papers are reporting it.
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay. And I can like broadly trust like government figures if the BLS releases a report. Sometimes they've got to do revisions, but like broadly speaking, I can trust like kind of figures that come out, right?
I mean, it depends which ones. Again, like there's, a lot of people now at this point in our country who, and I guess this would be my overarching claim is like, I feel responsible to you as a person that I admire. Like everything we disagree on, I consider that it's like the burden is on me to convince you. It's not on you to have. And I feel that way doubly so for when it comes to half the country. So if half the country now feels that the Department of Justice has been weaponized against their political choice, right? The sovereign at one time, who's now, of course, an ex-president, but if they feel that way, that is something you and I are responsible to
But
address.
this
Like,
is yeah, but this is the central thing I'm making. This is the issue that I'm having is
okay.
conservatives can cause this feeling to occur in people and then point to liberals, and then people in the center will point to liberals and go, well, look at the people have these feelings. You have to do something about it, right? So when you talk about, for instance, the weaponization of the DOJ, that's something that Donald Trump has done. It's inarguable. There is no evidence that it's happened under Biden. But because Donald Trump and the conservatives and all of the people lying in media on his behalf have said that it's happening under Biden, people have that feeling. And then they come back to the liberals and they go, hey, liberal, you need to address the fact that people feel this way. Well, of course they feel that way. Conservatives have been lying to them about it for years.
Okay, so I'm curious what you make of this counter argument. I do think there's a lot of evidence that it's been weaponized, but the right does try to make this happen more frequently than it succeeds at making this happen. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff you see on Twitter like that they really start to push, and you're like, oh God, this is going to be the latest conspiracy theory. We're going to hear about this forever and ever and ever, and it just doesn't take off. Like you can see, you talk to people, you go to the local bar, you see it is not taking off. Like people are just not buying it.
Wait, but people have bought it. All of
But
these.
people have bought that one. People have bought that one. But I'm telling you, like, there's a lot of ones that the right tries to push that people don't buy and people don't talk about and don't want to hear about.
Sure, but I mean, when you're pushing 100 conspiracies and people believe 40 of them, that's a massive success.
Well, or you could say that, some of these like turned out to be true, right? Like the
No.
Hunter Biden laptop story, right? Where you had like literally people from, CIA saying like this is Russian misinformation and turned out to be real, right? Like that's legit misinformation coming out of the deep state. So
Okay,
for
wait, hold on.
2 years,
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Okay,
Okay.
hold on. Let's back up a second. Okay. It's okay. I'm just curious if we can do this. Okay, just one simple thing at a time. Okay, one very very small thing at a time.
yes,
Okay.
you can know things that you don't observe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In the United States of America,
Yeah.
individual citizens don't actually have a right to vote for the president. The states have rights to vote, right? So when you go and you cast your ballot at a state, in a state federal election, the state decides how to run those elections. Most states right now, or every state has said that, okay, well, whoever wins the majority of the votes in our state, we're going to tell our electors to cast that vote for president, with the exception of Maine and Nebraska that kind of divvied up based on percentages, right? So I vote in a state. I'm in Michigan. 52% of us vote for a candidate. We're actually voting for their electors. Those electors will fill out their ballots. And then, on 2020, it was December 14th. They fill them out. The governor signs it. And they say, okay, we're going to send these to Congress to be counted on January 6th, right? We agree this is the process?
Yep.
Okay. So when Donald Trump, okay, has his campaign, not his campaign actually, because most of them wouldn't even go along with it. When he has his like personal friends, people like Giuliani or Powell, go out, or Mark Meadows, go out and solicit 79 other people to write down that they are the electors and that they were actually chosen by the state, and then to send in 7 different slates from all of the Democrat-won states to send in 7 Republican ones to the Capitol and say, you should count us instead on January 6th. How is that anything but like, that's not like a good faith legal challenge. That's not like he just had a disagreement. That's like a trying to steal an election, right?
Well, I mean, I don't, I think a lot of this hangs on what Donald Trump knew and what he didn't know, at what level he was involved, at what level he wasn't involved. I think a lot of this is being litigated through the courts, right? So some of these things were legal, some of these things were not, and
Well,
that's
okay, wait.
all
So
currently
I want to be in
being.
a really specific thing. So first of all, none of it is being like litigated yet. Donald Trump has said that he needs criminal immunity for all of it. That's his defense. He's saying I can't possibly commit crimes as president. That's it. So none of it is being denied. None of the
He's
depositions.
seeking criminal immunity for things he did as an officer of the, or what's the exact
He's
language? An
seeking
official
criminal immunity for the 4 years that he was president. He might say that it was for
for official acts.
president
Yeah.
has nothing to do with sending false slates of electors to people. That has absolutely nothing to do with being the
But he
president.
didn't send them. That was his that was Giuliani.
That worked under
And
his direction. And
right?
Giuliani is his personal
Oh,
lawyer.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that's sort of under dispute?
What's under dispute?
The the degree to which Donald Trump was involved in these efforts.
No.
Like he
Every
definitely
single. That's why the
he,
people. Or go ahead.
well, he thought he had won the election. And his decision, having been convinced that he had won the election and having never said anything to suggest that he thinks anything other than that, was that he was going to
Steal
avail
the election.
himself,
He was going to do a coup.
avail himself of every legal avenue
But
to
that's not
prove
legal. It's
that
illegal.
he had, well, I mean, that's being litigated by the courts, right? I mean, the courts are
No, he's
deciding.
saying I need criminal immunity for all of this. That's their
No,
defense.
that's a separate, that was a separate court case.
No,
There's
it
a whole
was that
fraud
was this one.
case going on. There's a fraud case going on, which hangs precisely on it is fraud to the extent that Donald Trump thinks he lost and still tried to pursue these legal avenues. And it is not fraud to the extent that he thinks he won, which is, of course, why he very cleverly has never admitted that he lost. Now, again, I'm not defending this behavior
You are
necessarily.
defending it though by saying that like it's a legitimate way
I'm
to.
saying it's not, I'm saying that availing yourself of every legal avenue to prove that you won an election is not disqualifying
That's
to
it's
me
not
personally.
legal. They lied. They told 79 different people to lie and say they were the electors. That's not a legal avenue. It's just a lie. They weren't the
So you're saying
electors, right? Rudy?
Rudy Giuliani lied.
No, I'm saying that the Trump group, everybody attests that Rudy and Trump were both in the same conversations where in the Trump campaign, when Trump decided to pursue this strategy, that's what all of the deposition, all the testimony, all the people involved have said, who aren't part of Trump's criminal conspiracy, have all said, yeah, Trump and Giuliani. And remember,
See, this is
Giuliani is,
why I think this is not necessarily worth arguing because you are convinced that Trump is convinced that he lost. And
yes, of
I'm
course.
convinced that Trump is convinced that he won.
Yeah, but you have no evidence
And
for that. And
but
there's
that
so
makes
much
all the
evidence on the other
difference.
side.
Well, I feel there's a lot of evidence for it. Namely, he's never once admitted that he lost, which is a
Wait.
lot of evidence.
So there's no way to know if a person is lying if they just don't tell you they're lying?
He seems to me to be very convinced about it in the way that he's lying. Yeah, you're saying, how can you tell if somebody is lying?
Yeah.
How do we usually tell? How would you know if I was lying? You would judge my affect. You would judge my consistency. You would judge the tone of my voice. You would judge my body language, right? You would judge my
No. I would judge
statements.
the actions you take. I would look at the actions. So if you were to do legitimate challenges in a courtroom and you were to have what you believe to be is very solid and strong evidence, and you were ardently pursuing what you thought was the right answer, then I'd say, oh, okay. I mean, they have a lot of conviction. But if you were filing bullshit court cases, a lot of them without even standing, asking for insane remedies in civil cases, engaged in multiple criminal conspiracies to try to overturn an election, and then asking another guy, Pence, to just unilaterally overthrow it for you, which Pence has come out and said that he had been asked to do, I would say, oh, it sounds like you don't think you won. It sounds like you're just trying to stay in power, right? Like, what could Trump possibly have done in your
I think
mind?
I mean, I look at him like he thinks he won and he thinks it was stolen from him, just like Hillary Clinton thinks she won in 2016 and thinks it
Wait,
was
she
stolen from
didn't,
her.
but Hillary never said that. Hillary never engaged in any criminal conspiracy. She never said she thought she won.
I agree with you that she behaved better.
No. It's not
Totally
behave better.
concede
She
that.
didn't, categorically. It's not the same.
She called Trump an illegitimate president who would not have won without irregularities.
He wouldn't have won without irregularities. That's absolutely true, right? Without Putin's intervention, without the Kremlin's intervention, without the DNC leaks in the Wait,
I
what
don't
part of that is
agree
not
with
true?
Oh, I just think that that's election denial, and I don't engage in that.
Hold on. Wait, I'm sorry. Wait. Do you think that the leaking of the hacked material from the DNC had absolutely zero impact on the election? It was a very close election.
I think it. I think. Yeah, I don't think. I think people felt really strongly that they wanted Donald Trump to be president. Yeah.
Wait. So you don't. But you think that the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Here's the difference. No, I don't think that changed the outcome of the election. Here's the difference between us. Like, you're very smart, and so you think most people are much dumber than you, which is probably true. And I am not very smart. And so I think I'm like everybody else. And so it doesn't occur to me that somebody would be fooled by a social media post that I would never be fooled by. Like I just can't imagine
You're
that
aware that like a
those
quarter of conservatives, a quarter of Republicans believe that there is a high level satanic pedophile sex cult in the Democratic Party. A quarter of conservatives believe that. You know that like Marjorie Taylor Greene is a QAnoner. She believed in the Hawaiian Jewish space lasers. Like,
I don't I mean I have a lot
do you acknowledge either of those things are true? That a quarter
I
of conservatives
admire Marjorie Taylor Greene a lot. I think she cares deeply about the
do you
people in her
acknowledge that Marjorie
district.
Taylor Greene was a QAnoner?
She has said that she used to believe some very sketchy things and no longer believes them. Yeah, I think that's true.
So she used to be a QAnoner, right? That believed in satanic sex
Well,
cults.
here's the thing. Here's the
You
thing.
won't even
Like,
acknowledge this. This is the
so I
issue, right? So there
here's
is
the
no
thing.
second or third
Here's the
order
thing.
conversation. We don't live in the
I
same
don't
factual world. This
I
is the whole issue that I'm having.
okay, so I hope you're not feeling gaslighted. Please tell me if I'm not trying to not answer your question. I'm just trying to suggest like a different gloss on it, which is like, yeah, QAnon is insane, right? There's people who believe that, right?
Like
But
Marjorie Taylor Greene did, and probably still
but it
does.
did and no longer does. Says she no longer does. But here's the thing. It turns out that there was an actual pedophile who was photographed and had very close relationships with a lot of people very high up in the Democratic Party, right?
Who?
Like,
Epstein?
yes.
Notice why is the other side so silent on Donald Trump's appearance in pictures with
So
Epstein?
I'm, and Donald Trump was in pictures with him. I'm not saying that this is a justification for QAnon, which I think is also probably anti-Semitic in some ways. But what I am saying is that like a lot of the time, like they are onto something and they go too far. But what we've done in like, especially in elite leftist discourse is epic levels of gaslighting to make people feel insane for pointing out things that are real. And, you know,
What? Here,
just
wait.
to come
Okay,
back to
wait.
policy for a second.
No. We're not. We're way divorced from the policy we're right now. What would it take for you to convince you that Donald Trump knew that he lost the election?
What would it take to convince you that he didn't?
What would it take to convince me that I already said? Like, if he was filing legitimate court cases with some kind of evidence and strong like claims, if he hadn't engaged in behavior a year beforehand, saying that it was rigged, that it was going to be rigged before it even happened, if he hadn't he denied the 2016 election results, by the way, that he won. He put together a commission to find voter fraud. They found none. They disbanded it.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, like this is insane. So
I mean, I could imagine him like I could imagine him saying something, either saying I did lose it, but now I'm back, right? Which is
wait. So he has to. So this is. Hold on, wait. Just another quick sanity check. For the criminal court system in the United States of America, we ascertain people's states of mind without confessions, right? Like you can convict somebody on first-degree murder or any kind of criminal like charge that requires a mens rea, a criminal mind, right? We can convict these without having mind readers in the courtroom, right? So we can figure out people's states of mind, right?
yeah, but I'm saying I have spent a lot of time considering this question. I mean, I'm not a spokesperson for the campaign or anything. Like I had to
Sure.
decide who I'm
But then
going
I'm
to vote
asking, so
for,
what would you have
right?
to see from Trump to be convinced that he
I
knew that he
just
lost the
feel like
election?
every time he talks about it, he seems to me like a person who is deeply, deeply convinced that he won.
Yeah, but what would you have to see to think that like, oh, okay, he probably.
He could, I could, even right now, I could picture him saying something in a kind of like wink and, kind of like, I could picture the kind of affect that, I would expect from him if I thought he was lying about
So
it.
you would have to see him basically confess to it or basically say something
No, I'd
that.
have to see him say it in a way that I felt less convinced by. I mean, obviously, this is how we always judge whether somebody's lying or
No,
not.
it's
It's like,
absolutely not. To be clear, we judge generally by people's actions, right? To see if we think they're not if they're really convincing in the way they speak to us, right?
I don't think him having like a lunatic team trying to do, what he thought was the right thing is evidence that he was lying about
Wait.
it.
He didn't. But he went and personally got that lunatic team, right?
I'm not,
Real
I
quick.
don't think
Do
that
you
Rudy
do you
Giuliani was
acknowledge?
Rudy Giuliani was the best, like I don't think that
Do
that
you
was,
acknowledge that Donald Trump went and personally recruited Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and Eastman? These weren't White House lawyers.
yeah, yeah, of course he
Okay,
did.
so we can't say that he just has a lunatic team. These were his representatives, right? These were the people that he personally hired
Who
out.
he thought would find the evidence that he
And
had won, which he believed was true.
but none of the people that were tasked with investigating all of those people told him that it was false. Barr did. Everybody in the White House did.
Yeah.
Raffensperger and all the states did.
Yeah.
Everybody tasked with investigating, federal investigators, people like BJ Pack, federal judges, like everybody said that it was
Yeah,
bullshit.
but you have to understand like what it's like to be Donald Trump. I think there was a really good example of this last week when he did an interview with the editor-in-chief of Bloomberg News, and he sat there and the guy just sat there and said to him like again and again, like every economist thinks that this thing that you're proposing will be bad. And Donald Trump was like, yeah, but it really worked really well in the 4 years I was president.
Yeah, but it didn't work. That's
Again,
a
and
lie.
well,
That's a
okay.
lie, and all the economists do agree that large tariffs are bad, right?
I totally disagree with that. I think there's a ton of evidence, and we can go through the evidence on tariffs. I'd love to get back to policy and talk about tariffs with you. I think he's totally right, but his entire presidency was him implementing policies that helped average working class Americans and being told that he was either racist for doing it or stupid or
No,
that
he was
all the
being told that he was
economists
being
opposed
racist
it.
because he was saying things like a Mexican judge, a person of whose parents were Mexican, couldn't sit as a judge on a case of his because he thought he would be biased, or because
That
he
was
was
racist.
what?
That was before the election, but that was racist.
Well, then you'd admit. So he's taken actions, right?
There's been mass gaslighting around issues like immigration to average people on both sides of the political aisle who had to just sit there and take it for years because both parties were sort of hand in glove on this neoliberal economic agenda. We were going to have free trade and we're going to have like mass immigration and we're going to have no tariffs. And we're gonna,
Why was Obama called the deporter in chief? Like
why was
Barack Obama was known as being incredibly harsh on immigration. Under Obama's administration, for the first time ever, we saw
He
a
was
net
more
decrease.
harsh than Ronald Reagan, that's for sure, because he gave amnesty to 3 million immigrants.
Sure, Reagan was a long time ago.
I'm sorry?
Reagan was a long time ago. I'm just saying that the gaslighting is happening right now. Obama was not easy on immigrants, right?
He was less easy on immigrants than Bill Clinton was, but he was mostly deporting criminals. I mean, look, you're right. I don't want to, you're totally right about that.
And if we want to talk policy for a policy thing, right? And this is why I know that conservatives don't vote on policy and they don't care about illegal immigrants. I don't think it even affects the country that much, or at least people don't think it does. Because if they did think that, why would they all cheer when Donald Trump annihilated the immigration bill in Congress?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Republicans decided to pull the plug on the immigration bill, on the border bill in Congress, because Donald Trump told them to keep the border open for an election issue. Why wouldn't everybody be mad if this was such a huge deal in the United States?
Because that immigration bill set the bar for closing the border at 5,000 illegal immigrants a day.
Right now, the bar
is
is
a
unlimited.
bad bill.
It did more than that. The
No,
bar right now
that's
is
not true because then Biden took executive action 3 months later and he set the bar at 2,000. So just by defeating the bill, the bar was then lowered by 3,000 illegal immigrants a day. You can't with a straight face say that people aren't experiencing what's
I
going on
know
with
for a
illegal
fact they're not. I
immigrants.
know they're not. I know they're not.
You go into the inner city in any major city in America, talk to Black people, they are pissed about this because this is and has always come at their expense. This
If
is
you go,
something
then
that
why do all the major cities vote
progressives
blue?
used to
They're all
know.
blue.
You're going to wait and see what happens this time. The level at which Black Americans are going to be voting for Donald Trump is going to be pretty high and staggering. And a lot of it has to do with the gaslighting around immigration, the sort of stolen valor from the civil rights movement, to where you're suddenly asking people who have been at the bottom of the pecking order in this country since its inception to bear the burden of giving other people the American dream that they were never granted. I mean, this is something people will tell you if you ask them about it. It's so obvious. If you bring in 10 million people and 8 million of them are going to be working in 5 industries, the wages in those industries are going to absolutely plummet.
But that hasn't happened. That doesn't happen.
Absolutely has happened, and it's happened over the last
In which
10 years.
which industries
We've
have these?
seen it in
No, we haven't. That's
firsthand.
not true. We have not.
Absolutely
We
have.
have
Yes,
not.
this is if you look at where there was amazing wage growth in 2019. Then you had the post-pandemic labor crunch. immense wage growth for working class people because you had a whole bunch of people drop out of the labor force and they were getting great wages. And then suddenly inflation was up and Biden decided to decriminalize illegal border crossing. And that wage growth
Wage.
halted in its
I'm
tracks.
pretty sure
There is
real
evidence
wages
for
right
it.
now are higher than they were at the end of 2019. Like we've gotten higher than where we were on quarter four, like post COVID. Like, but the whole economy was booming when Trump came into office. Like after the Obama recovery for all of Obama's
Here's
last
the
term.
thing, you can't talk about the economy in the aggregate because there are different sectors of it, okay? So, for example, right now, during the pandemic, right after the pandemic, if you owned property, if you had stocks like now, right, last year, the year before, not during the pandemic, but you saw huge, huge growth because look at what's going on in the real estate market. I mean, look at the interest rates, right? So if you own property right now, it's probably worth like a quarter more what it was
Don't
2 years
most people
ago,
in the United States
5 years
live in
ago.
homes that are owned? Isn't like 70% of Americans in homes that are owned by the person living in them?
60% of Americans are homeowners. But you have to look at the breakdown there. A lot of those people are retired, and a lot of those people are people who are in the top 20%. And you have a lot of Americans who are working class, who work really hard, and who will never be able to own a home.
Wait,
And
top
they don't have
20% and
stocks.
retired of what?
What do you mean of
What
what?
are they in the top 20% about?
The top 20% in America controls over 50% of the GDP. There's been an
Are we talking
upward
wealth? Are we
transfer
talking
of
like
wealth.
income? Because if they're old, of course they're going to be in the top 20. They're older. They have more time to accumulate wealth, right?
Yeah,
So
but
we
they're not, seniors are not 20% of the country, right?
well,
So
no,
we
but you
have an
said
elite.
60% of the country are homeowners, so it's more than just old rich seniors buying homes, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But there's a lot of people who want to be homeowners. There's a lot of people who would love to own property who are stuck in the renter's market and will never be able to afford to own a home. There are people who are really struggling, who are struggling to pay rent, who are working two, three jobs and just cannot make it at the end of the month. And the inflation is absolutely killing them. And all they want is to go back to the economy from 2019. And because they want
But what
that,
is
they're
but the
told
what
that
is
they
the
don't believe in democracy.
well,
They're
they don't believe in
told
democracy because of Trump trying to steal
that
the
they're racist.
election.
They're told about
You
this and
already
that
admitted that
because
Trump said and has
there are
done things that are
certain.
racist. But
Well, I admitted that saying that the judge could not be objective because he was Mexican is a racist thing to say. It's obvious. I
sure,
mean,
that was one of many things he's questionably said and done. But
I think it was really racist when Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you're not black. I mean, that's pretty racist
wait,
too.
wait, wait, wait. Do you think that those two things are on the same level?
I think they're both racist.
I didn't ask that. Do you think those things are on the same level?
I think Joe Biden was probably like kind of saying it half jokingly, so it's not as bad.
Do you think that those things are on the same level?
I
Like
literally just said, I
the
don't
Joe
think it's
the,
as bad because he was
When Joe
joking.
Biden made that comment, Joe Biden was if you listen to the statement, he's obviously trying to say like if you don't support the black community, you don't support me. Or if you don't vote for me, you don't support the black community, right? And it came out if you don't support me, you aren't black. But he wasn't that obviously that wasn't what he was trying to say, right? When Donald Trump said this guy can't be my judge. He said that his brain was Hispanic poisoned because his parents are Mexican and because
I
Trump is
think
hard on Mexico.
I
This
think
federal judge, wouldn't be able to sit on his case. You acknowledge those two statements are not even in the same universe of
no,
statements,
I
right?
think suggesting that black people have to vote a certain way or be called not black or traitors to their race is racist. That's bad. That's very bad. It's very offensive. Yeah, that sucks. I think he was joking, so I think it was less bad. I think it was like Trump saying, I'm going to be a dictator for a day. It's a joke, so it's not as bad,
Well,
but
but Trump, to be clear,
still
Trump's not
racist.
joking when he says that, though, right?
But
Trump,
no, that was obviously a joke. I mean, that was 100% a joke.
you
Like
realize that that was in response
totally.
to Sean Hannity trying to give him a softball
Yes, I
question,
do. And
but
he
it
was
wasn't a
like,
joke when he said it.
just for a day. How can you be a dictator just for a day? It doesn't make any sense. It's a joke. It was a funny joke.
What do you
It's a pretty
mean?
good
No, it makes
joke.
perfect sense because people like you would say, well, he was just exploring all the legal avenues available to him to see
No,
what he
he
could get
was
done.
making fun of people like you who are like, oh my God, he's going to be a dictator. It was a joke. You know it was a joke. Come on. You know that was a joke.
I think that people like you are destroying this country. I legitimately feel like if this country falls, it's because of this hand wringing that happens for Donald Trump. You have no standard of behavior for him. You will make an unlimited amount of excuses. You will compare a Joe Biden misspeak to how
It's really
Donald Trump
sad.
conducts it. It is sad that we don't share it. So, like I said, like all these policy discussions don't matter because we don't live in the same reality. You won't admit that Donald Trump. Like, I'm curious. Do you think that?
I feel so convinced that you and I have shared values and you're trying to call me destroying the country. Like, doesn't that make you give you pause? Like, I think that we probably
It
have a lot in common. I'm trying to get to the policy conversation so
I
we can talk
agree
about
that I think there's
everything
people,
that we have in
but that's
common.
why I'm
Like,
saying.
we probably both want Americans overall to prosper and to be safe and to have beautiful families and to be able to provide for them in dignity. Like I can't,
I
I'm sure
understand that.
that
I
we
agree with that,
share
and I
those
probably no.
goals.
I
And
agree with
I'm
no.
trying to be like, let's find out like what we agree on because there's so much there. And you're like, you're destroying this country.
Do you think that people that send their gay children to reprogramming camps, do you think that they love their children?
That's such an interesting question. I've never thought about that before. Let me think about it. You mean because it's harmful, but they're doing it out of love?
Yes.
Is that the conundrum?
Well, it's not a conundrum. It's that just because you have a shared value of like an emotional or like a moral value that you share doesn't mean that you'll align on anything else. I'm sure that the Germans that supported Hitler, right, probably legitimately, I doubt they were all like, we're just doing this
No,
because we
but
hate the Jews. They probably
I started this by saying I don't think we agree on much, but I would rather be in a we with you than in a country without you because I think we share values. And if I can't convince you, I have to work harder. Like it's not even a question of, it would never occur to me to think that you're destroying this country. I think that you're a patriot who disagrees with me on issues, and I'm like
but we can't there you
so
understand there are some
thankful to be in
disagreements,
the
but
conversation
there are
with you.
you understand there are
The
some
idea that you could look at me because of some random person who neither of us has ever met and say that I'm destroying the country over some third party who, like,
the president of the United States.
I find that so
Do you agree that like we have to live in the same
dispiriting.
reality, regardless of like any moral like similarities we might have? That we have to live in the same reality? In order for
Yeah.
the country to function, right? Then there are some values that we have to share, and if we don't share these values, you have to be kicked out of the country, right? You agree with that,
But
right?
we do share those
Wait,
values.
wait,
No,
wait.
that's actually not how it works here.
Well,
You're an American if you're born in America. We don't kick people out for not sharing our values.
if so, we have a whole thing called the criminal code, right? And if there are certain things that you disagree with in the criminal code, it doesn't matter. If you do these things, you're incompatible, and we deprive you of your rights, right?
Well, you go to prison. We don't kick you out of the country.
Well, sure, okay, but you're kicked out of society, right? Felons are effectively removed from civil society, and you lose rights, right, for criminal conduct, for criminal misconduct, right, or criminal conduct, I guess, right. So there are a set of things that we have to agree on, at the very least, when it comes to how we treat other people. You can't murder, you can't steal from people or commit arson, break the whatever, right? We agree with that. I think that epistemically, there are things that we have to agree on as well. We have to have some shared value in terms of like we agree that democratic republics are good things. Now that might take different versions of it. Maybe somebody thinks that we should do more referendums, and somebody else thinks that we should balance the electoral college or whatever. That might do. But like if somebody's like, oh, I think that we should just have a king, right? Well, that's not very compatible with American values, right? Do we agree with that? That there has to be like some set of
But
like.
you're stuck with me and all of the millions of people who agree with me. So what are you going to do with us? Like you're stuck with us. You have to convince us, or you know what I mean? There's no other
Well, that's my goal.
option.
My goal is to have a conversation and
But
convince
telling
you.
me I'm destroying the country is not going to convince me. You
I'm
have to
not
actually
saying that
convince
for you. I'm
me.
saying that for the audience. That's the difference, right? It's because if I can't communicate with you, then I have to communicate to other
But you
people. Like
are communicating with me.
I'm
You're
not. I
sitting
can't.
there
I
and I'm
can't.
listening to
We can't.
everything
We
you're
can't share.
saying.
Okay. I mean, like you told me earlier that I can't give you a single set of facts that would convince you that Donald Trump knows that he lost the 2020 election.
I disagree with you about that. That doesn't mean that I don't belong in this country or that I'm not a person who loves this country.
If you don't believe in the results of the last election, would you agree that like the election and the peaceful transfer of power are one of the most important parts of the United States of
I
America?
think, like I said,
Wait. Do you agree that? Do you
66%.
agree? Do you agree that the? Do you?
I
Wait.
agree
Wait.
that it is paramount.
Okay.
And
Thank
I
you. Yes.
agree also, I believe, as the polling found, that 66% of Democrats believe that Putin had stolen the last election and interfered in the tallies. Okay. So clearly that cannot be the standard by which we judge who gets to be an American, who gets to be part of our
number one,
community.
that's whatever you're citing is not true. That's not that the election was fake or fraudulent. That might have been
That
true in one
Putin
poll.
literally intervened in the voting machines and the tallies.
Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but where did this come from? Or where did this number or idea come from?
This number of 66%, this is like it was like widely circulated right after the election.
I've seen in 2018 that this is a YouGov poll, 59% of Democrats are very concerned about improper relations between the Trump campaign and Russia. I see that.
I can send you this figure that's very widely known.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, you can shoot it to me later. But the fact that in the wait
miserable if you think you can only exist in community with people, like if the only people who you think are not destroying this country like are people who totally agree with you.
No, I never said totally. It's people who live in the same reality. You have to live in the same reality.
It's like, I admire you so much. I want to hear everything you have to. I want to have this conversation with you, but I am destroying America because I don't agree with you about something. Like,
it's because we are having core fundamental value disagreements. Core fundamental value disagreements is the issue, right?
This is not core fundamental.
This is core. This is more core than anything else we've spoken about.
I agree with you on the value.
You're agreeing with me. The value doesn't matter if it's generated after a totally different epistemic foundation, right? If we both say, for instance, we should be kind and compassionate to people, and a person says that I think that compassion is sending my gay kid to a re-education camp to get away the gayness, and another person says, well, I think that kindness is accepting my child as they are and not trying to force them into a different sexuality, right? Both of them can share that value of kindness, but they're coming from a completely and totally different place. There's no shared commonality there. So, like something is completely different between the two, right?
You know what? There's only one way to stop the first parent from doing that and make them become the second person, the second kind of parent. And it's by being in conversation with them. It's not by saying you're destroying this country.
Yeah, but when people on the outside are trying to say that both those parents are the exact same.
You have to have a consensus, right? You have to develop a consensus around things. And it's really amazing because Trump did actually create consensus around a lot of issues, but it's not.
To be clear, Donald Trump was not popular. He never exceeded 50%. Donald Trump had no policies. What are we talking about?
How can you say that? I mean, he implemented executive order after executive order. He was extremely effective on trade, on immigration.
He wasn't effective on trade or immigration. That's not true. What are we saying? Wait, how is he effective on trade? He failed miserably at trying to bring any of the Chinese manufacturing jobs to the United States. That took the CHIPS Act from Joe Biden.
All right, I'll just give you one example. Tariffs on steel and aluminum. He imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And immediately, all of the economists, literally all of the economists said, oh, this is going to explode the cost. No one's going to be able to build anything. No one's going to be able to buy anything, blah, blah, blah. But Trump said, you know what? He didn't say this, but the rationale behind it was, the average steel worker makes $88,000 a year. Most of them are working in the South. So these are like right to work states. So these are not even union jobs, okay? 88K, solidly middle-class wages in a lot of states in the South. We're going to protect this. Like, why would we flood the market with tons and tons of cheap Chinese, steel and aluminum? We're going to protect our
just as
industry.
A quick thing. So I'm looking at steel production figures, and I don't see this moving in a positive direction, basically, at all under Trump. It's about the same as it was under Obama, so I don't believe that, number one. Number two, the reason...
That's exactly the point. He protected it from going down.
It wasn't going down. It was... It was
because he put the okay. I don't know what you're looking at on your screen, but you didn't even.
Well, you also have to. You also have to.
Can I just finish let me just finish the story, because it did actually. The price for steel and aluminum did go up a little bit, because right after he imposed the tariffs, 25% tariff has a really big impact. The price did go up for about 4 months. And then it went right back to where it was, because internal free market capitalistic competition within the US between steel makers brought that price right back down again. And that's exactly what you want. I mean, that's what an America First policy would look like. It would be something that, protects the labor of the American worker from cheap foreign competition. And that was 100% a Trump. And, if you talk to economists, sometimes they'll
you understand that, like, we can't manufacture everything in the United States, right?
We can't manufacture everything, but we were manufacturing much more in 1971.
First of all, why would we want to manufacture base level material when we can put together more sophisticated products? Why would we think it's like good for the economy to tariff like basic products when we could be...
I think it's really good for an economy to have men doing jobs that don't require a college degree making $88,000 a year on average. Like that's just a very good thing because
Okay,
we
then in
want
that
more
case,
people to be middle class. And so
wait,
it turns out those jobs are middle class
but
jobs.
then
We want
all
to
of
keep
those
them
people are
here.
also, first of all, not, so you're talking about one small sector of the economy that they employed, right? To whoever is working in steel manufacturing, that's going to make every single thing more expensive that has
But I
these
just
products
told
in
you it
them.
actually didn't do that. It actually did not have that impact because the price of steel then leveled off. So it did
If
go
it
up for
doesn't
about
make,
four
then why
months.
were we importing it if it wasn't cheaper?
Well, here's the thing about tariffs that people don't realize is like when you, it's actually very important very expensive to get something from one place to another.
Wait,
So
then why did people import it? Why didn't we just make it in the US originally?
why did they ship the jobs overseas to China in the first place?
Yes.
The labor in China is much cheaper.
Yeah, so it was cheaper to produce it over there. So if we tariff that and produce it here, it's going to be more expensive.
Well, no, because we don't have to transport it here. There's a lot of recovered costs.
Then why did we ever export it to
You
China?
really would have to ask the manufacturers why they did that. I think a lot of them were selling it to China. They were selling it, not to America. They were selling it around the world globally. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are like so invested in China that you look at Apple, for example, Apple is more like a subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party at this point than it is like an American company because it's completely under the thumb of China.
Wait, do you
The
think
whole
Apple has that
supply chain
problem more, or
is
do you think TikTok has that problem more?
TikTok for sure, but Apple is, it's getting close. They give them all the data that they want from dissidents. It's really terrible. Why are you a person who thinks that TikTok is dangerous?
Um,
Or are you making fun of
I think
me?
it's
I can't tell.
concerning. No, I think it's
Oh,
concerning.
see, we
Um,
agree on that. I have to go in 10 minutes, but I want to end on a nice note. Can we talk about things we agree about again? I
we
need you to
don't
feel
agree.
better
I
about
don't
this.
feel better. I don't feel good.
Why do we agree on Israel and disagree on this? Like
We don't agree on
how did
Israel. I
that happen?
promise you, we don't agree on Israel.
Really? Why?
Absolutely not.
How are
Because
you
I
so
think that
convinced?
Israel 100% goaded the October 7th attacks into happening by foolishly and arrogantly assuming that they could kick the Palestinian problem can down the road forever and inflame those passions by moving the embassy to Jerusalem, by continuing to illegally annex and expand settlements in the West Bank without a permanent ceasefire or a permanent settlement agreement in place with the Palestinians, and by trying to do more and more bilateral peace agreements through the Abraham Accords while also continuing to ignore the Palestinians. I think that there was an incredibly arrogant decision by Israel to do so, and I think they did it to the harm and the detriment of the country.
I think it's a very legitimate point of view. I mean, it's not mine, but it's totally legitimate.
Okay.
How come you think how come you're able to see the anti-Semitism and so many other people can't see it?
Well, at this point, I think people just see what they want to see, and I think
But
that
how come you want to see it?
I'm willing to see things because one, I'm lucky enough to not have a political community anywhere. I'm literally just all on my own. So I fight with leftists, I fight with conservatives, I fight with anybody that I want to, and I have a lot of political freedom as a result of building my own community. So that allows me to two, actually read a bunch of stuff and just develop my own opinion, independent of whoever I'm trying to appease at that particular moment in time. I don't have to worry about that. So I don't get paid by Russia like Tenet Media did, or like Dave Rubin or Tim Pool. I need people who are there, and I don't have a big allegiance to any particular political community, basically. Yeah.
Very interesting. It's always interesting when people are swimming against. Do you feel that you're swimming against the tide, or you don't even experience it that way?
I think that the majority of people that say that they are swimming against the tide are just looking to swim along with a different tide, and then they dip their hand into the other one and they pretend they're getting a lot of pushback. It's like a comedian that stands up and goes, "I'm going to make a really edgy joke right now," and then they make fun of trans people. Like, "Wow, I'm so edgy." It's like, congratulations! You're in a crowd of people; they're all cheering you on. Yeah, I don't define my political positions that way, but I'm super depressed.
Oh no. Oh no, I feel awful. You invited me on your show and I depressed you. I'm so sorry.
Are
Why
you?
don't be
It's
depressed?
depressing. It's horrible. The conservatives have no standard for behavior in this country,
I'm
but
not
you're
a
okay with that.
conservative. I'm a leftist.
Wait, do you support Kamala Harris in this upcoming election?
I'm still making up my mind. Like there are definitely things that could
You're
change.
supporting Donald Trump 100%.
No, I haven't. I really am still.
There's no reasonable person that is undecided at this point. It's impossible. What
I
could
really
possibly
liked her sort of the plan that came out right in the beginning to fight price gouging. But then we haven't heard much about that since. I think that's one of the most important issues is how groceries have raised basically the greedflation from corporations. And I haven't
Sure,
heard
but I
Trump
mean, like,
talk
one of
about
the
that.
reasons why we don't, do you agree that we don't talk about policy a lot because Donald Trump doesn't talk about policy?
Donald Trump talks about policy
Can you
constantly.
give me a single policy he's talked about besides tariffs?
Immigration,
What is his policy? He just says we're going to close the border. There's
mass
no,
deportations.
you think that's a real thing that's going to happen? We're going to deport 20 million people or
I
whatever?
don't know, but it has the support of 51% of
That's not a
Americans and
policy. That's a slogan.
63% of Hispanics.
That's a
So it's
slogan. He
very
has no
popular.
border. That's fine. Yeah, slogans are popular, but there's no legislation he's proposed. There's no bill that he's
He's not in
supporting.
government. How could he propose
He
legislation?
shot it down when he was out of government.
I mean, that was not a good bill.
You can say
That
it
was
wasn't a good bill, but it was
a pretty
authored
bad
by
bill.
Lankford in the Senate. Most Republican commentators agree that was a gift to Kamala Harris and that it was a bill that probably would have been unpopular with a lot of Democrats, but now they can take credit for saying that the other side basically shot it down, which they did.
Yeah, but people are not buying that. See, that's an example of the Democrats trying to push a line that is not. But let's get back to the like why you're feeling depressed and how I can like make you feel better.
We live in fundamentally separate realities. There's no feeling better about it. We just live in a totally different. Do you think that like when you look at the immunity decision from the Supreme Court and Donald Trump seeking that type of like criminal immunity, does that type of stuff worry you? Is that a thing that bothers you at all?
Um, I do think that it's important that a president have some level of immunity. Otherwise, like, what they were saying, well, people could then, go after Barack Obama for drone strikes and
Wait,
like you
but
can't.
Barack Obama was president. He came and he went, and nobody did. So what was the issue? Barack Obama didn't ask for criminal immunity. Do you notice that Barack Obama went to the White House, the Office of Legal Counsel, and the DOJ? That's where he tried to get his advice from, not private attorneys that he hired to steal an
I
election
mean,
for him. Like,
you're not gonna like the answer to this, but it's I think it is okay. Let me see if I could if you would agree with this.
I think I would. Can I guess your
Do
answer?
you
Can I guess your answer? Are you
do
gonna say
you
that Barack Obama was part of the establishment and Donald Trump
do
came in
you
as an outsider and the
agree
deep state was fighting against him and that's why he needed more protection than Barack
do
Obama, who
you
was part of the
agree
establishment?
that it is in the nature of power to try to keep and consolidate and grow its power rather than cede it?
This is another great example of a value statement because I agree with it. I do agree with that, but you're going to agree with it. But I'm going to say what you're saying doesn't make sense because the power is shared among people in government. Donald Trump doesn't want to share power. That's why, for instance, why isn't Donald Trump running with the same vice president that he had before?
I mean, because Donald Trump is not a conservative and Mike Pence is a conservative. Donald Trump does not
JD
believe in
Vance is a
free trade,
conservative. What are you talking
in
about?
free trade
Wait.
and
JD Vance is a
Pence is
conservative,
a free
right?
trader and Donald Trump does
JD
not
Vance
believe in foreign wars and
JD
Mike
Vance
Pence
is a
believes in
conservative. Do you
foreign
acknowledge that
wars.
JD Vance is a conservative?
He is,
Okay,
but
wait.
he
So then
believes
that doesn't make any
I'm
sense.
saying there are three, the argument trying to make is like there were sort of three planks of the GOP, the Reagan GOP. Okay. There was the foreign interventions and American exceptionalism. There was free markets and free trade, and there was social conservatism. That was the GOP before Trump. And Trump showed up, and Trump is not a social conservative. He does not believe in foreign wars, and he does not believe in free trade. And he basically took an axe to the sort of three legs of the party, which are, you look at the primary, and that's kind of what Nikki Haley represented. And there's just zero interest in that from the Republican electorate anymore. Like nobody wants that version of the GOP anymore. So Mike Pence really represented that. And I think he took him the first time around because, he thought, oh, I should try to get those establishment Democrats to vote for me with this guy.
But
And
then
now
why did he choose JD Vance, who is
because
an
JD Vance
establishment
represents
Republican?
he's very much not an establishment
He literally
Republican.
said that Trump was going to be like he didn't know if Trump was America's
Well,
Hitler
he's had a big change of heart since
when he
then.
got picked for VP.
No, he's been pro-Trump for the last, I want to say like 2 or 3 years.
That's enough. He was governor and he's a Republican prior to that.
He's a senator. He's not a
Or I'm
governor.
sorry, a senator prior to that.
Yeah. Very pro-Trump senator. By the
No,
way,
he said that Donald Trump represented the exact type of speech that scared people that he
that was
loved.
that was before he became a senator. But as a senator, J.D. Vance has been the most bipartisan senator in the Republican Party since he got into the Senate. He sided with the railroad workers. He's every time Bernie Sanders has asked for anything, related to workers' rights, J.D. Vance has been, pretty on board with that. He walked a picket line with auto workers. He's a pro worker, anti-trade, anti um, foreign intervention, foreign wars,
Wait, hold on.
conservative.
Are you, or I'm not, this isn't like personal, I'm just asking because I see the pen and everything. Are you Israeli or do you like support America supporting Israel?
I'm Jewish.
Okay.
Um, I'm not Israeli.
Okay. Do you think that
Yeah.
America should support Israel?
I think right now it is very much in America's strategic interests. We get a lot out of that relationship, but I think we honestly, at this point, are getting more out of the foreign aid we give to Israel than Israel is. And I think Israel should stop taking it because it's really hobbled its ability to be sovereign, in my view.
Do you think that the United States should continue to support Ukraine?
No. I don't think we get anything out of that relationship. I'm much more like Barack Obama in 2012. I don't see Russia as a great threat to the United States. And I think it's really interesting that that's now considered to be like a conservative position when that was the Democrats' position until very recently,
Sure.
including after they annexed Crimea. But I guess this is for the next conversation. I hope you'll
Sure.
have me back.
Do you think, yeah, I mean, we can chat whenever you want. Do you, just
I'm,
as a curious thing,
I'm
do you think that Russia tries to like interfere in our digital media?
Sure, yeah. I don't think that their interferences are determinative or convincing, but of course they do. Yeah, sure.
Do you
I
believe in
think
like
we
that
I think we do that to other countries as well. I
as much
mean,
as
I
Russia
think
does?
that's probably not as much, but we have a bad history with nation building and intervening and regime change and we've got our share of, faults. Luckily, I think the American people are too smart for that crap, so it doesn't bother me very much. I mean, I think we should have better relations with them so they wouldn't do it, but I don't feel like that's actually altering the minds of my fellow Americans. I just have too much faith in them.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, if you want to chat about anything else ever, if anything else ever comes up, you can shoot me a DM and
I
I can always
do. I'm
drag on it.
sorry I made you sad. My intention was the exact opposite.
All right. Well, listen, yeah, if any particular thing
I'm
comes up, yeah,
sorry.
feel free to shoot me a message. We
Please
can,
stay in touch.
yeah, well, you always got my DM. So,
Okay.
all right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I I have to go into the jungle and do DMT and reevaluate because somebody is like just like detached to like a clinically insane level. Like I think it's diagnosable. One of us, when I'm having these conversations, one of us has to be medically crazy. I think it can't be. It's something is not happening. I mean, either my mind is not clicking on something, or I can't. I don't even. The Wait, hold on one second. I love you. Wait. Real quick, listen, hey, I'm gonna be in Nevada so we can go canvas, so we can at least win this state. Sign up for it if you haven't already. Sign up sheet is going in the chat, and then also I think they're trying to fundraise a couple $1,000s more for hotels, so I'm putting that in chat as well.